make it very clear, I do not have a plan. We have one. So it's not our plan. Drawdown, just that term means the first time on a year-to-year basis where greenhouse gases peak and go down. And we'll talk more about that, why. The basis of this is what started it. And that's Greenland. That's the North-Evian Ice Research Station. I won't play the rest of it. Keep your ears safe. This is what they do. This is where I went 9 years ago. And what they study, of course, is the ice core down to bedrock. And what they're looking for is this. And this is the CO2 levels the last 400,000 years. And you can see where we are supposedly at now, 407 ppm. And you can see another thing here, which is that humankind has never existed or lived on this planet, any form of sapiens, Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, whatever, over 300 ppm. Never happened. So the idea that somehow we know what's going to be like over 300 ppm is interesting. It may be fantastic science, but we don't know. But this, in fact, is the actual level of greenhouse gases today. What's the difference? The first one, CO2. This is including greenhouse gas equivalents, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons. So we're actually at 490 ppm. And if you look at this right here, the last peak, that is the Eemian period. It's 125,000 years ago. Temperatures were 1 to 2 C higher than normal. And the ocean was 20 to 30 feet higher. There was hippopotamus lounging around in the Thames River Delta. Kent and Sussex didn't exist. It was water. And that's 1 or 2 degrees. And I mention this because the UNFCCC, the UN Framework on Climate Change, the goal is 2 degrees and mitigation, saying we want to mitigate this and to the point where it does not interfere with food production. And if you tell me where you can find mitigation on this as being a successful goal, please raise your hand and tell me. Or reduction or stabilization. So it was from this that I decided to do Project Drawdown. There's the science, it's fantastic. This is the way, not you, this is the way people get their news on climate change. They get accurate science in terrifying headlines with clickbait. Okay, next to it, like wife smashes husband's head ornament with frog ornament and keeps him mummified in layers of sheeting for 18 years. And so somehow this is supposed to be equivalent or of equal interest to people, and you see this over and over. The headline is accurate. The real reason that so many women have to spend so much time getting ready. I mean, this is how most of the world gets its information about global warming and climate change. And this one, again, Peter Bates study, Oregon State, interesting study, peer-reviewed, and on 20 things you never knew you could do with Coca-Cola. So actually they're doing the right thing. They're pouring it down the toilet, so that's something. And if you're an individual and you're concerned, you go to Google, try it yourself. I've tried this all over the world. These are the 2 top hits, at least I got, from science-based organizations, Scientific American, Union of Concerned Scientists. And, you know, as Brett Victor said, these are proverbs. These are very good things to do. Love your mother, forgo fossil fuels. I mean, consume less, of course, you know. But even things like use power strips in your home entertainment center from the Union of Concerned Scientists. So what does this do to individuals? What it does to individuals is make them understand and know that what they can do is not adequate to the task at hand. That may not be true, but this is what it makes people feel like. So my question was, where do we stand? Where do we stand? Is it game over? It looks that way on that graph. And so what we set out to do at Project Drawdown is to map, measure, and model the 100 most substantive solutions to climate change, reversing global warming. It had never been done before. After 40 years of climate change and global warming being in the public sphere, No one had ever done it. And that is Project Drawdown. That's our organization. We're in the wilds here, out in Sausalito, a little place there. We didn't have money, so what we did is we went out to the world, very much like the people you saw just on the stage right now, and asked people if they wanted to be Drawdown Research Fellows. And we were overwhelmed with candidates from 22 countries, actually more than that. We chose candidates from 22 countries, 6 continents, Aga Khan Award winners. They were Fulbright scholars, Rhodes scholars, White House fellows, extraordinary people. And that is the core research team of Project Drawdown. And to that, we added 128 advisors. These are only some of them. So we felt that if we were going to do something that was credible, we had to be a we had to be a collaborative, we had to join together. And our purpose as an organization was to reflect back to the world what it knows, what we know. Not what we know in Sausalito, but what we know collectively, so that we could see it, get it up there, so we could say, okay, this is what we know. And this is what we did. We just did the math. That's all there is to it. We did the math. What did we do the math on? 2 things, carbon and money. How much carbon would it avoid or sequester, a given solution? How much would it cost? And what would be the savings or costs over 30 years? We wanted to see, could we reverse global warming within 30 years with solutions that were in hand, practical, well-known, well understood. I call them W.W. Granger. And there's no if and ands or buts about it, no wannabes or coulds. This is what we know how to do and are doing right now. And when you look at the solutions, this is solution without text, you get 4 figures. The first is rank by carbon or CO2 equivalents. So on the right hand is gigatons, but it's CO2 equivalents as well. And that is based entirely on peer-reviewed science. And we always chose the median or low median number where there is a range. And so we purposely made the whole model conservative, both on the financial side and on the carbon side. There's only 2 things you can do about an atmosphere with respect to greenhouse gases: stop putting them up there or bring them back. That's it, just 2 things. There's several ways to do the first, and there's a plethora of ways to do the second, and right now they all involve photosynthesis. So the next figure is gigatons, that is billion metric tons of greenhouse gases, either avoided or sequestered, over 30 years until 2050. The next figure is the net cost, Y net. It's compared against to a business as usual scenario, combined cycle gas, coal, whatever it is that we would do under a business as usual scenario. And where geothermal is applicable, it saves $155 billion over 30 years. And the last figure is the net operating savings. In this case, it's 1.02 trillion. So that is, now we have a lot more data, ROI, RRR, stuff like that, but in terms of the website and the book, we wanted to make it simple, understandable, and clear to virtually anybody. So what I want to show you now is just some of the solutions. And one of the things that we found is that, you know, with the mantra for global warming, really is about energy, 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 solar, 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 wind, Elon Musk, solar, wind, don't eat so much meat. Basically, you hear that over and over and over. And those are crucial, critical solutions, don't get me wrong. But somehow we have this idea that if we get energy right, that we get a hall pass to the 22nd century. And nothing could be further from the truth. That's a scientific howler. It just won't work that way, and if we don't get it right, we won't get there either. So I'm not in any way denigrating renewable energy or eliminating fossil fuel combustion, but I'm just saying it requires a system. A system caused this. A system is the cure, and it's everything. I'll go back to that. This is afforestation. I'm just going to go through these quickly. We don't have a lot of time. High-speed rail. Japanese pretty much own this right now. This is indigenous people's land management. Nobody manages forests better in the world than the original inhabitants. And that's what indigene means. It means the original inhabitant of land. This is improved rice cultivation. Rice is a big source of methane emissions. There's two ways to change cultivation so that you reduce methane emissions. It increases the productivity and the profitability for the farmer. There's no net cost here because it just takes a farmer crossing his or her paddy to the next one and teaching them what to do. This is onshore wind. And again, what we try to do in the imagery, and you'll see this going forward, is to break up the cliches about solutions. The cliche here is a green hill, wildflowers, children playing, a blue sky, and there's a wind turbine on the top, and you're going, oh, it's so beautiful. That is a terrible place to put a wind turbine. This is where you want to put a wind turbine, where the weather is pissy and awful. And this is the North Sea, Norfolk, Sheringham Shoal. And this is a, not Photoshop, by the way. This is a triathlete going by these Siemens 3 megawatt solar wind turbines. So again, and this is what? This is rooftop solar. But this woman is an Uru woman like Titicaca who lives on a straw island. She has to put straw on every 90 days or she sinks, and this is her daughter's. And she's been using kerosene, just as was spoken about earlier before I came on stage. Kerosene is polluting. In this case, it could set the whole thing on fire and they would die. So her smile has a lot to do with, not to do with global warming, but the fact that she can take care of her family in a much, much better way. This is net zero buildings. It shows a low rank because all the technologies are modeled elsewhere, LED and insulation, retrofitting, smart glass, etc., HVAC. Here we go, forest protection, the Kermode Bear and the Great Bear Forest. There's a tremendous amount of carbon locked into our forests. You can see 896 billion tons, which is about the same that's in the atmosphere right now. So give you an idea of what that would be like if it was released. This is clean cook stoves, extraordinarily important in terms of black carbon emissions. This is the office of the former accounting firm for the Oscars, PricewaterhouseCoopers, in Montreal. And the gentleman on the right is waving to a person in Prague. And this is a transport solution. And he can just log on to his iPad with a Segway or whatever it is, and then scoot around the office and go to meetings, go to conferences, go to whatever, to your office and show up. And this is called telepresence. It's a significant solution. This surprised us. This is reduced food waste. The number 3 solution is reduced food waste. When this came out, and we looked at the numbers, we went over everything. And not only is it a conservative number, but it is very, very true. This does not count methane emissions from landfilled food in the world because we couldn't figure out how to calculate it. So it's actually much more than this. And this is a Dasanok woman in Ethiopia who actually, they were building a bridge across from her village, so she and her sisters go across and collect the bottle caps and everything that the men throw away when they built a bar. And so there's bottle caps and SIM cards and whatever, and they make jewelry and headdresses out of it. And now they sell it to boutiques in France. So this is household recycling. And this is a plant-rich diet. What is it? Does it mean vegan, vegetarian? No. Could if you want. What it means is reducing the amount of protein in the developed countries where, frankly, we eat too much protein. It's not good for us. It's not good for the planet either, given the way it's produced. Reducing it down to 50, 60 grams, and in those places where they're nutritionally challenged, raising the caloric and protein content to the proper levels with a significant amount of more plant-based protein, but not eliminating animal protein at all. The number 4 solution. Again, we're in the who knew category. The whole project for us was who knew, who knew, who knew? No one. We didn't know, that's for sure. And then we have coming attractions, which are really technologies that are here, scientifically valid, but there isn't sufficient data to model them, so we don't. This is frames, big frames under the ocean with actuating pumps that go up and down with the water to bring up the thermocline. And within weeks from a marine desert, you can have phytoplankton, zooplankton, algae, kelp, forage fish, feeder fish, the whole trophic cascade within 3 or 4 weeks in the marine deserts. 99% of the tropical oceans are marine deserts. Ever been skin diving and see straight down? That means there's no life if the water is that clear. This is repopulating the mammoth steppe. It was a big piece in Atlantic last month about the 2 biologists in the Arctic Circle in Siberia who basically said if we bring back the animals that were extirpated 12,000 years ago, with the exception of the woolly mammoth, which we're not going to be able to bring back necessarily, although people are working on it, what happens is they can stay there all year round in the winter to minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 100. I mean, extraordinary animals. Horses can do this, and so can the reindeer, muskox, and others. What happens is they brush away the snow in the winter to eat, and that lowers the temperature of the soil by 2 degrees centigrade, which is the permafrost protection plan for the clathrates that are there. Brilliant. This is building with wood. The Torch Tower in Dubai, Grenfell in London would not have burned if they were made of wood. Say, no, of course that's not true. It is true. And you can read the book or go to the website or you can go to Yale University and look at why that is true. These are safer than steel and concrete buildings, safer. And this one is my favorite. A cow walks onto a beach. And this is a farmer in Prince Edward Island whose farmer joins the beach. This is not his beach or Prince Edward Island, obviously. And he knows the cows were eating kelp, were producing more milk, so the question is why? And I was talking to Ramez Nam at lunch, and he knew right away. I don't know if you know why, you can figure it out. And he asked his county agent, he said, I don't know. He asked the scientist. He said, well, it could be because it's not producing as much methane when it eats the seaweed, the dairy cows. And so they tested it, and they separated the herd, and ones who were eating kelp, they put big plastic bags on their head and measured the exhalations, and sure enough, there was a reduced methane production. Methane production in a cow, sheep, or goat is not necessary. It does nothing for anybody, not us, not the cow. It's not really, it's there, and there's theories about why it got there, those bacteria, but it is not metabolically necessary. And it takes a lot of energy, basically, to produce methane in a cow or cattle or sheep or goats. So it was a science project. They learned that, but what are you going to do, feed cows kelp? Not likely. So he met a scientist in Australia at CSIRO who's working on the same problem. And they went about to try to discover what it could be that they could feed cattle, etc., that would have the same effect. And they discovered an algae named Asparagopsis taxiformis, and it reduces methane emissions in ruminants by 70 to 90% in a 2% quantity in feed stuff. So I just want to give you a sense, and you had that sense on stage too, there is this amazing amount of solutions coming too. It's not like we just measured the 80 extant existing solutions, we did, but humanity is on the case, and that's not what we get necessarily from our media, but it is. What surprised us? Everything surprises. The top 20, for sure, refrigerant management. We were just so disappointed. That was number one. It was like, it's not sexy at all. Like, come on. Food was 8 of the top 20. This is a tree map, and food exceeded electrical generation. Like, again, we checked our numbers. Again, we had, not just advisors, but 40 outside scientific reviewers on our models. And we were impressed. And the top solution is refrigerant management, because HFCs are 5 to 10,000 times more powerful. Energy, electrical generation on energy, would be number one if you put onshore and offshore wind together. But what surprised us was this one, educating girls. I mean, I want to say something on my behalf. I was the one who put it in there, and my researchers said, no, 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 no. There's no data to support that. There is a tremendous amount of data of what happens to a girl who is allowed to matriculate and be in school and come to be a woman on her terms, as opposed to being yanked out of school with early marriage and the number of children she has, you can say by choice, by force. It depends, but the fact is it's 5+ children. If she is allowed to go to 11th, 12th grade, she makes very different reproductive choices. She earns more money. Her children benefit from that. They're healthier. It's a virtuous circle. And the difference between the high and median population in 2050, the UN projections, is basically access to family planning. This is one pathway to family planning. This is the other access. And it's just like, and when we modeled this, we modeled family planning clinics everywhere, not just Africa, in Arkansas. Come on. In other words, that women everywhere should be supported in their reproductive health, well-being for their family, and so forth. So, add those up. That's the number one solution to reversing global warming, is empowering women and girls. Again, who knew? It doesn't gainsay anything else, but it does say that maybe we've been looking for love in some of the wrong places, and that this is a much more interesting set of solutions than just wind and solar. And so anyway, this is what drawdown looks like. And I don't want to say, well, some of the top ones are the most important. They're all important. Tell me which organ in your body is not important. Just the big ones are important, or the small? I mean, they're all important. We are a system. And so there's no such thing as a small solution. You saw some small solutions on stage. They're not small. They're extraordinarily important. And so this is what we came out with, and this is what Neil talked about, the plan, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. Why that title? So brash, really? Well, I'll tell you why, because no one ever proposed one. Find one. Really, find one. Doesn't exist. Can you imagine? And we say plan, not because we have a plan, but because we found one. We found one. All 80 solutions we mapped, measured, and modeled are scaling. They're all scaling. They don't care what Donald Trump thinks or Jeff Sessions. They don't care what Scott Pruitt thinks. They're all in place scaling. It doesn't mean that governments can't be enormously helpful in terms of accelerating things. But humanity is not waiting around for politicians to figure this out, okay? And so this title came from a Stanford intern, not me, and he wrote the verso at Penguin during his internship there. And I looked at it for a while. I thought, no, we're not a plan. We're just a model, blah, blah. And I looked at it and finally said, no, he was right. It's a plan. Briefly, language. Can we stop talking about fighting, combating climate change? You can't do it anyway. The climate's supposed to change. It's like saying we're going to fight ocean currents in sunshine. Give me a break. Can we stop using war metaphors to talk about what is us? Us, this is us. Who are we fighting? Right? So this idea that there's an other, that the atmosphere is other, is the sickness, the disease, the mental problem that caused the problem. There is no other, right? And what we're doing right now is, what you see is, with all due respect to the climate establishment, and there is one, it's not a pejorative term. There's a badminton establishment. Anytime people coalesce around a thing, there's an establishment, there's a climate establishment. What does it say? 2 degrees C, 2C, 2C, 2C. Can't go over 2C. If we go over 2C, we're screwed. We're going over, we can't stop it. I mean, you hear it over and over again. Okay, what does 2C mean to 99.99% of the people of the world, in the world? Nothing. Has no meaning whatsoever. And then you hear from scientists that human beings, the brain, is not equipped to deal with future existential threats. which is true. And so we know that, and so what does the climate establishment do? 2C, which is a future existential threat. And is this working for us? I don't think so. And what I'm saying is the back door, we're trying to go into the back door of humanity, and it's locked. And that's 2C, future existential threat. The front door is wide open. And again, I'm not trying to, you saw the front door here. How the way to reverse global warming is to address human needs, the needs they have now. And what do humans need? They need security, they need nutrition, they need homes, they need food, they need jobs, they need dignified employment that makes them feel that their life means something to their children, to their community, and to themselves. And we are the only species without full employment. Think about that. Only one on the earth that isn't fully employed, and never has there been so much work needed to be done. So the way to reverse global warming is actually to go with what we know about human beings. And this is Singularity University. This is the classes there that took the 20 top solutions and then tried to figure out, and we figured out how to accelerate them using CRISPR, nanotech, sensors, drones, whatever, to take other technologies and take those practices and techniques and see how to accelerate them. I think some of you guys are here, actually. I hope so, anyway. Thank you. And I just want to end with, this is one of our most famous scientists in the United States. Certainly he gets a lot more respect as a scientist than most. I have 34 seconds to go. I'm going to read you something. Remember the end of The Martian? He comes back, he's the gray-haired astronaut, you know, he's talking to wannabe astronauts, and he says, pay attention because this could save your life. Right? When I was up there, did I think I was going to die? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, and that's what you need to know when you go up there, because it's absolutely going to happen to you. This is space. It does not cooperate. I'm going to paraphrase this. This is the atmosphere. It does not cooperate. Right? It's what it is. At some point, everything is going to go south on you. It's happening. Everything, and you're going to say, this is how I end, which is what a lot of people are saying. You saw the David Wallace Wells article in New York Magazine saying we're cooked, right? Everything is going to go south on you. Now, you can either accept that, or you can go to work. That's all there is to it. You just begin. You do the math. I love that part. That's what we do. You do the math. You solve one problem, and you solve the next one, and then you solve the next one. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home. And that's what this is about. Global warming isn't happening to us, it's happening for us. It's a gift. Every system without feedback dies. This is feedback. It's a gift. It's an offering to reimagine who we are, how we relate, what matters, and what we can create with our minds, our hearts, our brilliance. And this is what Singularity is about. Thank you so much.